The morning Brandon Keller failed to marry me was not the day my life fell apart. That had begun 3 weeks earlier, at 5:07 a.m., when he called from the hospital and said, "Sophia, I need you to fix something." 6 years of loving Brandon had trained me to recognize the difference between "I need you" and "I need you to clean up what I did." That morning, I heard the second one. "What happened?" I asked, already sitting up. There was a pause. Then a door shut on his end of the line. One of my patients crashed after surgery. My fingers tightened around the phone. "Is he alive?" "Yes. He's stable now." "Then what am I fixing?" Brandon exhaled sharply, as if I were making a difficult morning worse. "The family is threatening to call the press." I closed my eyes. "Why?" "They think I ignored signs of internal bleeding." "Did you?" "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point." His voice hardened. "Sophia, I've been in surgery for 12 hours. I don't need an interrogation from my fiancé. And the patient's family doesn't need a public relations speech. They need to know what happened. They're emotional. Someone they love almost died. So calm them down." His tone softened, becoming the voice he used when he wanted something from me. "You're good at this. Better than anyone." That was Brandon's favorite kind of compliment. It always arrived attached to unpaid labor. I looked at the white dress bag hanging from my bedroom door. Inside was the suit I planned to wear to our civil wedding in 3 weeks. Simple, elegant, nothing his mother could call desperate or flashy. "I'm not on call," I said. "You run operations. I manage hospital systems. I don't cover for surgeons." "I'm not asking you to cover for me." "What are you asking?" Another pause. "Just get here." He hung up before I answered. By 6:15, I was inside Keller Private Medical Group's main Boston hospital, listening to a man named Daniel Reese demand to know why his father had nearly bled to death. Brandon stood across the consultation room in wrinkled scrubs. His surgical cap was still in his hand. He looked exhausted, but not frightened. Daniel looked terrified. "My father kept saying something was wrong," he said. His jaw shook as he pointed at Brandon. He told the nurse his stomach felt like it was tearing open. "No one called us for 4 hours." Brandon's face tightened. "Mr. Reese, postoperative discomfort is common after a procedure of this kind." Daniel slammed his palm against the table. "He needed another surgery." I responded as soon as the change was reported to me. "That's not what the nurse said." Brandon glanced at me. It was small. That look. Barely a movement. But I knew what it meant. Take control. I sat beside Daniel instead of standing beside Brandon. "You deserve a full timeline," I said. Not a summary and not an excuse. Brandon's eyes narrowed. Daniel stared at me. "Who are you?" "My name is Sophia Grant. I oversee hospital operations. I'm going to arrange an independent review of your father's chart. A surgeon who does not report to Dr. Keller will speak with you within the hour." Brandon stepped forward. "That isn't necessary." I turned toward him. "It is now." The muscles in his jaw flexed. Daniel swallowed. "Is my father going to die?" "No," Brandon said immediately. I looked at him. "Can you guarantee that?" His face went still. I turned back to Daniel. "Your father is receiving intensive monitoring. I will make sure your family gets an update every 30 minutes. We'll also provide a hotel room, meals, and direct access to the patient liaison office." Daniel's anger broke for a moment. His eyes filled. "I just want someone to tell me the truth." "I know." When I reached across the table, his hand was cold. Brandon waited until Daniel left before closing the door. "What the hell was that?" I stared at him. "That was me preventing a grieving son from calling a television station. You made it sound like I did something wrong." A patient reported severe pain, and 4 hours passed before he returned to surgery. "You don't understand the clinical details." "Then explain them." "I don't answer to you about my cases, but I answer for them when families threaten lawsuits." Brandon dragged a hand over his face. "I knew you were going to do this." "Do what?" "Turn a difficult night into a moral trial." I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Your patient almost died, and I saved him. You operated on him after the problem became impossible to ignore." His eyes flashed. "Be careful, Sophia." The warning in his voice made me go quiet. Not because I was afraid of him. At least, that was what I told myself. Brandon stepped closer and lowered his voice. "You weren't in that operating room." "No." I was in the consultation room doing the job you didn't want to do. He stared at me for several seconds, then his expression changed. The anger faded. His shoulders dropped, and suddenly he looked like the man I had loved for 6 years.
I'm tired,
he said. I hated how quickly those words reached me. I know. I haven't slept. I know. He took my hand. I need you on my side. I am on your side. Doesn't feel like it. That's because being on your side doesn't mean lying to everyone else. His thumb moved across my knuckles. Just get us through today. He murmured. Please. That was the moment I surrendered. Though I did not call it surrender then. I called the legal department. I called the independent surgeon. I arranged a review, secured temporary lodging for the Reese family, and convinced Daniel not to speak publicly until he received the full medical timeline. By noon, the crisis was contained. By 3, Vanessa Hale had turned it into a triumph. She stood beside Brandon in front of a row of cameras, wearing a fitted navy dress and the calm smile that had made her Keller Medical's public relations director before she turned 30. Dr. Keller immediately recognized a rare postoperative complication. She told the reporters. His decisive intervention saved the patient's life. I watched the live stream from my office. Brandon stood with one hand in his coat pocket, composed and handsome. No one would have guessed he had called me in a panic 10 hours earlier. A reporter asked who had coordinated communication with the patient's family. Vanessa smiled. Our clinical leadership team worked together. Not my name. Not even my department. A nurse named Tasha stopped outside my door and looked at the screen. You handled that family, she said. It was a team effort. She gave me a long look. You always say that when someone else takes credit. Before I could answer, the live stream ended. 20 minutes later, Brandon walked into my office with Vanessa beside him. He had changed into a clean white coat. She reached up and straightened his tie without asking. You were brilliant, she said. Brandon smiled. You made me sound brilliant. That's my job. Her hand remained against his chest for 1 second too long. Then she looked at me. Oh, Sophia, I didn't realize you were here. It was my office. I usually am, I said. Vanessa tilted her head. Of course, Brandon either missed the insult or chose not to hear it. Everything settled with the family? For now. Good. He checked his phone. Dad wants us at dinner tonight. Why? The wedding agreement. My stomach tightened. The prenup? Vanessa's eyebrows rose. Brandon looked annoyed. It's standard. For families with assets. Vanessa said lightly. I turned to her. Thank you for explaining my engagement. Her smile thinned.
Brandon sighed.
Can we not do this today? Do what? This tension between you two. Vanessa placed a hand over her heart. I don't have any tension. No, I said. You seem very comfortable. Brandon gave me a warning look. Vanessa smiled again. Satisfied this time. I'll see you at the board reception. Brandon. After she left, I closed my office door. Does she touch every doctor like that? He stared at me. Are you serious? I asked a question. She fixed my tie. She could have told you it was crooked. His mouth tightened. I just spent the night saving a man's life. And somehow that prevents you from answering me? You're jealous because Vanessa is good at her job. I'm angry because she acts like I'm a stranger standing too close to my own fiancé. She's not interested in me. Then she has a strange way of showing it. Brandon threw up one hand. This is exactly why I didn't mention the Washington trip. I froze. What Washington trip? He looked away for half a second. That was enough. There's a medical leadership award in D.C. He said. Vanessa nominated me. When? The same week as the wedding. Our wedding is on a Thursday. The ceremony takes 20 minutes. I stared at him. He rubbed the back of his neck. I'm not saying I'll miss it. You told me you cleared the entire day. I did. Plans change. Are you going to Washington with her? It's work. That wasn't my question. His expression turned cold. You've been under a lot of pressure lately. I almost smiled at the calculation in that sentence. He did not answer me. He diagnosed me. Don't do that. Do what? Make my reaction the problem so you don't have to explain your behavior. For a moment, something sharp passed through his eyes. Then he picked up the folder on my desk. 7 tonight. My parents' house. Don't be late. He walked out before I could answer. I arrived at Richard and Margaret Keller's Beacon Hill townhouse at 7:10. Margaret noticed the time before she noticed me. You're late. There was a patient crisis. Brandon was there on time. Brandon left the crisis with me. She pursed her lips as if that answer proved something unpleasant about my character. For 3 years, I had managed Margaret's medication schedule, driven her to neurological appointments, and slept in the guest room after 2 of her seizures. She never introduced me as the woman who cared for her. She called me Brandon's girlfriend until the day he proposed. Richard was waiting in the dining room with a thick document beside his plate. He did not ask about the patient. "We should handle this before dinner," he said. Brandon sat beside me. His knee touched mine beneath the table, a small gesture that might have felt comforting if he had looked at me. Richard pushed the document across the table. Standard prenuptial agreement. I opened it. The first pages covered property owned before marriage. That did not surprise me. The Keller family controlled hospitals, surgical centers, clinics, and real estate across New England. I had never asked for any of it. Then I reached the employment section. If I left my position after marriage to support Brandon's career, I would receive no compensation for lost earnings. If we divorced, I would waive any claim arising from unpaid labor performed for Keller Medical or the Keller family. My throat tightened. What does uncompensated personal and professional contribution mean? Richard folded his hands. Exactly what it says. I've worked for the group for 6 years, and you have received a salary below every director whose department I managed during a crisis. Margaret sighed. Must everything become a complaint? I looked at her. I'm asking what I'm signing. Richard tapped the page. It prevents confusion between family obligations and corporate services. Family obligations? Helping Margaret. Supporting Brandon. Attending functions. Those are not billable activities. I never billed you. Then this clause should not concern you. I turned another page. My heart began to pound. The agreement stated that any money I had previously contributed to Keller-affiliated businesses would be legally recognized as an unconditional gift. I read the paragraph twice, then a third time. Absolutely not. Brandon finally looked at me. Sophia. No. Richard's face did not change. Is there a problem? You know there is. I transferred more than $8 million from my mother's insurance trust when Beacon Rehabilitation was acquired. Margaret's eyes flicked toward her husband. Richard remained calm. You invested in your future family. I provided bridge financing to a family enterprise you expected to join. You told me I would receive an ownership interest. We discussed several possibilities. Brandon leaned toward me. This is just legal language. Says the money was a gift. You weren't expecting me to repay you. I was expecting the investment documents your father promised. Richard's voice cooled. Be careful with accusations. I looked at Brandon. Did you know this clause was here? He hesitated. Not long. Maybe 1 second. But after 6 years, I knew every version of his silence. You knew. I knew Dad wanted the agreement to be comprehensive. Did you know it would classify my mother's money as a gift? Sophia. Lower your voice. My face burned. Margaret set down her wine glass. A woman who enters a prominent family should understand that protections are necessary. Protections from whom? No one answered. I looked from Margaret to Richard, then back to Brandon. From me? Brandon reached for my hand, pulled it away. He frowned. You're taking this personally. It is a contract about my money, my job, and my marriage. How should I take it? Richard sat back. The Keller name carries significant value. We cannot risk litigation if the marriage fails. I laughed in disbelief. You're asking me to sign away $8 million because you're afraid I might become greedy later? Margaret's expression hardened. No one called you greedy. You didn't have to. Brandon lowered his voice. Can we discuss this privately? We are discussing it privately. I mean, without attacking my parents. I asked whether you knew they were trying to erase my investment. His eyes narrowed. They are not erasing anything. Then add a clause confirming my ownership interest. Richard answered before Brandon could. That will not happen. The room went silent. I turned toward him. Why? Because the rehabilitation companies are Keller assets. They were purchased with money from my mother's trust. Partially. And they use my mother's patents. Under license. A license the trust can revoke. For the first time, Richard's expression shifted. It was slight. His eyes sharpened, and one finger stopped tapping against the table. Brandon saw it too. He placed his hand over mine. gripping more firmly than affection required. Sophia, enough. I pulled free. No, not enough. Not anymore. Margaret shook her head. This is what comes from discussing business with someone who does not understand how families like ours operate. I stared at her. Families like yours? Her face stiffened. Brandon whispered, Mom. But she continued, you have had opportunities most women in your position would appreciate. A respected job, social access, a future with a successful surgeon, a job I earned, because Brandon trusted you. I was rebuilding your outpatient scheduling system before Brandon remembered my last name. Sophia. Brandon snapped. I looked at him. His face was flushed now, his eyes hard with embarrassment. Not because his mother had insulted me, because I had answered her. He pushed the agreement toward me. Take it home. Read it. Stop reacting like we're trying to rob you. My hands went cold. Then let my lawyer review it. Richard's mouth flattened. This document is confidential. Lawyers understand confidentiality. We prefer to handle family matters internally. I closed the folder. That's convenient. Brandon stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. Why are you determined to make this ugly? I stared up at him. Because it already is. He pressed both palms against the table. Someone who truly loves me would not turn our marriage into a negotiation. The words landed harder than I expected. Not because they were clever. Because he knew exactly where to hurt me. I had spent 6 years proving I was not with him for money. I had paid my own expenses, refused his father's gifts, worked holidays, and cared for his mother without asking for recognition. Brandon knew that. He also knew I was afraid of looking calculating. True love, I said slowly, requires me to sign away money that belonged to my mother? It requires trust. Then sign something protecting me. His face changed. There it was. The answer he did not want to say aloud. Protection was reasonable when it protected him. When it protected me, it became an insult. I stood and picked up the folder. Where are you going? He asked. Home. We haven't had dinner. I've lost my appetite. Margaret's voice followed me. You should think carefully. Sophia. Pride can cost a woman a great deal. I turned at the doorway. So can trusting the wrong family. Brandon caught up with me outside. He grabbed my arm before I reached the sidewalk. What is wrong with you tonight? I looked down at his hand until he released me. What is wrong with me? You embarrass my parents. Your mother called me an opportunist. And your father tried to turn my investment into a gift. They're protecting what they built. With my money. You keep saying that like you bought the whole company. I never said that. You're keeping score. You told me the money made me a partner. I told you we were building a future. A future where everything becomes yours? He looked away. A car passed. And for a moment neither of us spoke. Then Brandon's shoulders dropped. I don't want to fight. I don't either. He stepped closer. Then stopped looking for reasons not to trust me. My throat tightened. I wanted him to apologize. I wanted him to say he would tear up the agreement, confront his father, and tell his mother I had earned my place beside him. Instead, he touched my cheek. I miss the woman you used to be. I went still. What woman was that? The woman who believed in me. I still believe in you. No, you question everything now. Maybe because nothing adds up. His hand fell. I have to be in surgery at 6. Of course he did. Brandon always had somewhere more important to be when I asked a question he could not answer. He kissed my forehead and walked back toward his parents' house. I stood there holding the agreement against my chest. 3 hours later, I sat alone at my kitchen table, reading every page. First, I thought I was searching for proof that I had overreacted. Instead, I found an appendix labeled Schedule C. Keller Family Legacy Assets. The list included 3 rehabilitation companies: Beacon Rehabilitation Holdings, Harbor Neuro Recovery, New England Post-Acute Services. I knew those names. I had written their expansion plans, negotiated their staffing contracts, and reviewed every acquisition budget. More importantly, I knew where the first $8 million had come from. My mother. I checked the transfer records saved on my laptop. Then I compared them with the dates in the agreement. The asset schedule claimed Beacon Rehabilitation had been a Keller family property since March 2019. My mother's trust had funded the acquisition in July 2019. I read the date again. Then I opened the original purchase email Brandon had sent me 6 years earlier. We can't close without your help. Sophomore, once the deal is complete, your investment will be protected. Promise. My hands began to shake. The document in front of me did not merely call my money a gift. It claimed the Keller family had owned the company before my money ever entered it. That was impossible, unless someone had changed the records. My phone lit up with a message from Brandon. Don't stay mad. I love you. A second message appeared. Sign the agreement, and we can finally start our life. I stared at those words until the screen went dark. For 6 years, I had believed I was helping the man I loved build a medical empire. That night, for the first time, I wondered whether the empire had been built with my money. And whether our wedding was never meant to make me part of the Keller family. Maybe it was meant to stop me from taking back what had always been mine. I did not sleep that night. At 2:14 a.m., I printed the asset schedule. At 2:37, I found the bank transfer from my mother's trust. At 3:05, I found an email from Richard Keller promising that my contribution would be documented as a protected equity interest. At 3:41, I found the first document that had disappeared from the company's official records. It was a draft operating agreement for Beacon Rehabilitation Holdings. My name appeared on page 12. Sophia Grant, 28% beneficial interest. The final version stored in Keller Medical's corporate system listed Richard Keller as the sole beneficial owner. I stared at the two files until the numbers blurred. Then I checked the document history. The draft had been created on June 18, 2019. The final version had been uploaded 6 months later, but the signature page claimed it had been executed on March 3. 4 months before my money funded the acquisition, someone had not simply removed my name, someone had rewritten the timeline. My phone rang at 6:12. Brandon. I let it ring twice before answering. You're awake, he said. So are you? I'm heading into surgery. Congratulations. He went quiet. Are you still angry? I'm reading the agreement. That's good. I found the rehabilitation companies in Schedule C. Another pause. This one was longer. Sophia, don't start your morning like this. How should I start it? I don't know. Coffee? A shower? Anything besides looking for a conspiracy. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. Why does the agreement say Beacon Rehabilitation belonged to your family before my trust funded it? Because Dad had been negotiating the acquisition for months. That doesn't make him the owner. It's complicated. Then explain it. I have a patient waiting. You called me to make sure we were okay. We're not. His voice sharpened. You're turning paperwork into a relationship crisis. No, the paperwork proves the relationship was already a crisis. Sophia, did I own part of Beacon Rehabilitation? He exhaled loudly. You invested in the project. That is not what I asked. I can't do this right now. Did I own part of it? He said nothing. I looked down at the draft agreement with my name on it. You knew. I whispered. That isn't fair. You knew my name was removed. I knew Dad restructured the transaction. Without telling me. You weren't involved in the legal details. My money was involved. We were building a life together. That sentence is starting to sound like an excuse for theft. His breath caught. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. Do not use that word about my family. What word should I use? You're upset. I understand that. But accusing my father of stealing from you is unacceptable. What did he do? Brandon? I have to go. Of course you do. He lowered his voice. Don't access files you're not authorized to review. My hand went still. I'm an operations manager. I have access to acquisition records. You have access for business purposes, not personal investigations. You sound worried. I sound tired. No, you sound like someone who knows what I'm going to find. He ended the call. I sat there with the phone against my ear long after the line went silent. Until that moment, part of me had still wanted a reasonable explanation. Brandon had just given me something else. A warning. At 8:30, I entered Keller Medical's administrative headquarters and acted as if nothing had changed. I answered messages. I approved staffing requests. I reviewed a vendor contract. At 9:15, Vanessa leaned against my office doorway without knocking. You look exhausted. I had work to finish. She smiled. Brandon said you two had a difficult dinner. Brandon discusses our private conversations with you? He was frustrated. That wasn't my question. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. You should know something about men like Brandon. I looked up from my computer. Men like Brandon? Highly successful men. Men with public careers. Her eyes moved over me as if she were evaluating an employee's uniform. They need peace at home. I'm familiar with the concept. Are you? Her smile remained polite, but her voice did not. Because questioning his father 3 weeks before the wedding doesn't sound peaceful. I folded my hands on the desk. What exactly did Brandon tell you? That you're anxious about the prenup. I'm not anxious. Angry. Then, I'm reading a contract. Vanessa laughed softly. You always make everything sound so practical. What should I make it sound like? A woman about to marry into one of Boston's most respected medical families should probably sound grateful. There it was. The word they all kept circling. Grateful. Grateful for the underpaid job. Grateful for the invitation to family dinners. Grateful for the privilege of caring for Margaret. Grateful that Brandon had chosen someone without a famous last name. I leaned back. Did Brandon ask you to talk to me? No. Then why are you here? Her expression tightened. I'm trying to help you. By reminding me that I should know my place? Her eyes cooled. You said that. Not me. You didn't have to. She reached into her handbag and placed a printed itinerary on my desk. Brandon will be in Washington next Thursday. I looked down. The trip began the morning of our civil wedding. There were 2 passenger names on the flight reservation. Brandon Keller.
Vanessa Hale.
I read the page twice before looking at her. He told me he hadn't decided. He decided yesterday. And you thought I should hear it from you? I assumed you knew. The satisfaction in her face told me she had assumed nothing. What time is the return flight? Friday afternoon. Our ceremony is Thursday at 11. Vanessa gave a small shrug. The award committee moved his media schedule. He could decline. Why would he? Because he's getting married. She studied me with something close to pity. Sophia, doctors like Brandon don't decline career-defining opportunities for courthouse appointments. It isn't a courthouse appointment. Of course, the way she said it made the word sound childish. I pushed the itinerary back toward her. Are you sleeping with him? Her smile disappeared. What? You heard me. I'm his public relations director. That isn't an answer. She took one step closer. You should be careful. Jealousy is not attractive on a woman in your position. What position is that? The woman he has spent 6 years defending to his family. I almost laughed. Defending me. As if my presence in his life were an argument he had generously agreed to make. I stood. Get out of my office. Her eyes widened slightly. Then she smiled again. Maybe that temper is exactly why he needs the prenup. I opened the door. Leave. She walked past me, then stopped. Washington matters to him. So do I. Vanessa looked back over her shoulder. Are you sure? After she left, I locked the door. My hands were shaking. But not because of her. Because Brandon had booked the flight after promising he would clear the day. Because he had told Vanessa about our argument. Because someone had removed my name from an operating agreement. And because every time I asked a direct question, the people around me answered with an insult. I opened the company's corporate database. For the next 3 hours, I traced every entity connected to the rehabilitation division. Beacon Rehabilitation Holdings owned the clinical operations. Keller Clinical Property Partners owned the buildings. Harbor Neuro Recovery held the equipment leases. New England Post-Acute Services employed the therapists. Each company paid fees to another company. Each company borrowed from another. The structure looked complicated enough to discourage questions. But I had designed half the operating systems. I knew where the money moved. I found my mother's trust payment in Beacon's acquisition account. 2 days later, that money had been transferred to Keller Clinical Property Partners. From there, it funded the purchase of 2 buildings. The buildings were now listed as Richard Keller's premarital family assets. My chest tightened. I searched for patent licensing payments. My mother, Elaine Grant, had helped develop a neurological rehabilitation assessment system before she died. The system measured functional recovery after stroke, spinal trauma, and complicated surgery. It was not famous outside the industry, but hospitals trusted it. Keller Medical had used it to build its rehabilitation network. According to the company records, the trust had received licensing fees. According to the trust account I managed, less than a third of those fees had ever arrived. I printed the discrepancy report. Then I found a set of internal invoices charging the rehabilitation companies for strategic development services. The payments went to Keller Advisory Partners, Richard's private company. In 3 years, more than $21 million had been transferred out of the rehabilitation businesses. My mother's money had bought the assets. Her patents had created the value. Richard had been draining the profits. And Brandon wanted me to sign a document saying I had given it all away. I needed a lawyer. Not one recommended by the Keller family. Not one impressed by the Keller name. There was only one person I could think of. Owen Mercer answered on the 4th ring. Mercer. His voice was flat and guarded. It's Sophia Grant. Silence. Then. I know who you are. I need to speak with you. No. The answer came so quickly that I pulled the phone away from my ear. I haven't told you why. I can guess. You probably can't. You work for Keller Medical. You're engaged to Brandon Keller. 2 years ago, your company destroyed my reputation. Now you need legal advice. His laugh held no humor. I think I understand the shape of the problem. I saved your files. That stopped him. What? The original compliance investigation, the patient audit, the billing comparisons, the emails you gave the board. His voice lowered. Why? Because they ordered me to delete the copies in operations. And you didn't? No. Did anyone know? No. Another silence. Where are they? Encrypted storage.
Offline.
Do not access them from a Keller device. I know. You didn't know enough to call me 2 years ago. The words struck cleanly because they were true. I was afraid. So was every employee they told to discredit me. I never signed a statement against you. You stayed quiet while they called me unstable and dishonest. I know. Do you? I closed my eyes. I told myself I was protecting the patients by staying inside the system. And were you? I had no answer. Owen waited. Finally, I said, no. His voice changed slightly, not softer, less dismissive. What happened? I found evidence that my mother's trust funded the rehabilitation network. I knew outside capital had been hidden. I didn't know whose. It was mine. And Keller wants you to sign it away. I looked at the prenup on my desk. Yes. Do not sign anything. I haven't. Do not confront Richard again. I already did. He muttered something under his breath. Did you tell Brandon what you found? Some of it. And? He warned me not to access corporate files. Owen was quiet for several seconds. Can you meet tonight? Yes. Bring paper copies only. No querer laptop. No company phone. This is my personal phone. Assume it isn't private. A chill moved through me. Where? He named a small law office near Government Center. Before he ended the call, I said, Owen, what?
I'm sorry.
That is not useful yet. Then he hung up. That evening, Owen entered the conference room carrying no briefcase and no expression of welcome. He was taller than I remembered, with tired eyes and the posture of a man who had learned not to turn his back on anyone. He did not offer his hand. Show me. I placed the documents on the table. He read without speaking. The prenup, the trust transfer, the draft operating agreement, the final version, the patent royalty records, the intercompany payments. After 10 minutes, he looked up. How long have you had access to this? The trust records? Always. The corporate records. Through my job. And you never compared them? I trusted them. His mouth tightened. But he did not insult me. He returned to the documents. This date is false. I know. This signature page may be false too. My signature isn't on it. Doesn't need to be. They're trying to establish that the company existed as a Keller asset before your contribution. Then they can call your money a capital contribution to an entity they already owned. They promised me equity. Do you have that in writing? I handed him Brandon's email. Owen read it twice. This helps. Can I recover the money? Maybe. If this were only about an investment dispute, Richard would bury you in litigation for years. My stomach dropped. But it isn't only an investment dispute. He continued. He pulled the patent license agreement toward him. Your mother's trust owns the rehabilitation assessment patents? Yes. I'm the successor trustee. Did you read the misuse clause? I read the agreement years ago. Read it again. He pointed to a paragraph near the end. I read aloud. Authorization may be terminated upon evidence of fraudulent billing, falsified clinical reporting, unauthorized sublicensing, or use of the license system in a manner inconsistent with patient welfare. My pulse quickened. Owen slid another document across the table. It was part of his old investigation. I found falsified recovery scores in 4 Keller facilities. Patients who showed little improvement were recorded as meeting insurance benchmarks. Some were kept in treatment longer because higher scores supported reimbursement. I stared at the numbers. These facilities used my mother's system. Yes. Then the license can be revoked. Yes. What happens to the rehabilitation companies if I revoke it? They lose the clinical models supporting their contracts, research partnerships, and much of their financing. How much are they worth? Keller's last investor presentation valued the network at just under $3 billion. The room seemed to narrow around me. I had spent 6 years being told I was lucky to sit at their table. They had built nearly $3 billion of value on my mother's work and my money. Owen watched my face. Do not confuse value with cash, he said. You cannot walk into a bank and take $3 billion. I know, but you may have the power to stop them from claiming it. I looked down at the misuse clause. What do I need? Proof. Clean proof. Not material obtained illegally. Not guesses. Not emotional accusations. I can get it. His expression hardened. That confidence is dangerous. I know their systems. They know you know their systems. Brandon already warned you. I can't do nothing. I didn't say do nothing. He gathered the papers into separate piles. You document ownership. You preserve evidence. You identify every authority you granted the company. You do not alter records. You do not download patient information. And you do not tell Brandon what you are doing. The last instruction hurt more than it should have. He's my fiancé. Owen looked at me for a long moment. Is he? I flinched. He continued before I could answer. A fiancé plans a marriage. Brandon Keller appears to be planning a release of claims. That doesn't mean he understands everything his father is doing. Then ask yourself why he wants your signature before he explains it. I said nothing. Owen leaned back. There's something else. What? If you revoke the license and challenge ownership, Keller will accuse you of endangering patients. I would never shut down treatment. They won't care what you intend. They'll say you're a rejected fiancé using sick people as leverage. My mind went immediately to Vanessa. She's already building that story. Who? The public relations director.
Vanessa Hale?
You know her? She attended the meetings where they decided I was the problem. He slid the prenup back to me. You need a plan that protects patients before you make any move. Otherwise, Keller wins the public argument even if you win the legal one. What would that plan look like? A temporary independent operator, continuity agreements, emergency payroll reserves, notice to insurers and lenders, a new licensing structure. That could take months. Not if the trust documents already give you emergency authority. I searched through my copies until I found the trust administration section. Owen read it, then tapped one sentence. There. The trust allowed the trustee to transfer licensed assets into a nonprofit or public benefit entity if continued commercial use threatened patient welfare. I looked up. I can create a foundation. You can begin preparing one and transfer the patents. If the evidence supports termination and the rehabilitation centers, ownership will be contested. Control may be frozen. But if your money funded the acquisitions and the records were falsified, you have leverage. Leverage. The Kellers had always treated that word like something only they were allowed to possess. What do you need from me? I asked. The truth. I've given you the truth. No, you've given me documents. His eyes held mine. I need to know whether you are looking for protection or revenge. The question made me angry. I'm looking for what belongs to me. That can become revenge very quickly. They stole from me. Probably. They used my mother's patents to falsify patient outcomes. Yes. They tried to make me sign away my rights. Yes. And you're worried I might be angry? I'm counting on you being angry. I'm asking whether you can still make decisions that keep patients safe. I stood and walked away from the table. For years, I had been the calm one, the useful one, the woman who took insults quietly because someone had to keep the hospital running. Now the first person willing to help me was asking whether I could control myself. I don't want to destroy the rehabilitation centers, I said. I built them. Owen said nothing. I recruited the first therapy directors. I wrote the patient transfer protocols. I negotiated the contracts that kept 2 rural programs open. My voice shook. I don't want patients thrown out because Richard Keller is a thief. Good. I want the centers separated from the people abusing them. Good. And I want every dollar taken from my mother's trust accounted for. That is a legal objective. I turned toward him. And I want Brandon to look me in the face and admit he knew. That is not. The distinction hurt. Owen's expression softened for the first time. You may never get the confession you want. Then how do I move on? You stop needing the person who betrayed you to explain why you deserved better. I looked away before he could see my eyes fill. My phone vibrated. A message from Brandon. Dinner tomorrow. Just us. We'll fix this. A second message followed. And stop involving outsiders. Dad says the prenup cannot leave the family. I showed Owen. His eyes narrowed. How does Richard know you contacted someone? I didn't tell him. Did you print the documents at work? Yes. From your user account? My stomach dropped. Yes. Owen stood. Change every personal password tonight. Do not use your home Wi-Fi for this. And from now on, assume they are watching your access. You think Brandon is monitoring me? I think people who falsify ownership records rarely depend on trust. The next evening, Brandon arrived at our apartment carrying takeout from the Italian restaurant where we had celebrated our first anniversary. He smiled as if nostalgia could erase a contract. I brought your favorite. I'm not hungry. His smile faded. Sophia, can we please act like adults? I've been trying. He set the food on the counter. I spoke to Dad. He's willing to revise some language. Which language? The employment section. What about my investment? His gaze shifted. That's more complicated. It isn't complicated. Either I own an interest or I don't. You need to stop thinking like an employee. I'm thinking like the person whose money you used. He rubbed his face. Here we go again. Did you know my name was on the original Beacon operating agreement? His hand stopped. I watched the answer cross his face before he spoke. What agreement? The June 2019 draft. I don't remember every document. You emailed me that my investment would be protected. And it was. How? You became part of the company. I became an operations manager. You got a career. The words knocked the air from me. A career? Yes. Before me, you were managing one outpatient clinic. I was 26. And now you oversee operations for the entire group. Because I earned it. Because my family gave you the opportunity. I stared at him. He seemed to realize what he had said. Because his expression changed. That came out wrong. No, I think it came out exactly right. He stepped toward me. Sophia, I'm not your enemy. Then answer one question. He sighed. What? After the wedding. Are there additional documents you expect me to sign? His face became unreadable. Dad is simplifying the corporate structure. What documents? Routine acknowledgments. About the rehabilitation companies? He picked up the takeout bag and began unpacking containers he no longer cared about. They're standard. Will they confirm that my mother's money was a gift? You're obsessed with that word. Will they? He set a container down too hard. You wanted to help my family. I wanted to invest. You wanted to marry me. I still did when I woke up this morning. His head snapped toward me. What is that supposed to mean? It means I need the truth. The truth is that you are letting a contract poison 6 years together. No, Brandon. The contract is showing me what those 6 years meant to you. He walked toward me. His face tight. Do you want to cancel the wedding? The question sounded like a threat. 3 days earlier, it would have terrified me. Now I noticed something else. He expected me to panic. He expected me to apologize. I lowered my eyes and forced my voice to soften. No. His shoulders relaxed. I want to understand. You do understand. My family needs protection. I know. He studied me suspiciously. Then he touched my arm. Good. I hated how relieved he looked. I'll review the revised draft. I said. That's all I'm asking. He kissed my forehead. Later, while he showered, his phone lit up on the counter. A message from Vanessa appeared. Flight is confirmed. Don't worry. By the time she realizes you're not coming, we'll already be in DC. I did not touch the phone. I did not need to. I stood there until the screen went black. Then I returned to the bedroom and opened the folder Owen had given me. Inside was a list of documents I needed to secure, authorities I needed to revoke, and agencies that would need to be notified. At the bottom, Owen had written one sentence by hand. Do not warn people who are counting on your silence. I looked toward the bathroom door. For 6 years, Brandon had believed my love made me predictable. He believed I would forgive the lies, sign the papers, and wait for him whenever his career became more important than me. Maybe he was right about the woman I had been. But as I photographed Vanessa's message with my own phone and sent it to a secure account, I understood something that Brandon did not. I was no longer trying to save our wedding. I was preparing to survive it. On the morning I was supposed to marry Brandon Keller, he sent me a text at 6:18. Emergency meeting. Don't panic. I'll call you soon. At 6:21, Vanessa posted a photograph from Reagan National Airport. Only her champagne glass appeared in the picture, but Brandon's watch was visible beside it. I had bought him that watch for his 35th birthday. The caption read, "Big day for Boston medicine." I stared at it for several seconds, then set my phone face down. I did not cry. That surprised me. For 6 years, the possibility of losing Brandon had felt like the end of my life. Now that he had finally chosen to humiliate me in the clearest way possible, I felt something colder than heartbreak. Relief. At 7, Margaret called. Where are you? At home. You should already be getting ready. I am ready. She paused. Has Brandon spoken to you? Not yet. Her voice became falsely casual. He may be delayed. Delayed where? At the hospital. Presumably. I looked at Vanessa's photograph again. Presumably. Margaret cleared her throat. Whatever happens today, I expect you to behave with dignity. I almost laughed. Why would you need to remind me of that? You've been emotional lately. Did Brandon ask you to manage me? I am trying to protect you from embarrassing yourself. Thank you, Margaret. She relaxed at the softness in my voice. I knew you would understand. Men in medicine carry responsibilities women sometimes take personally. Of course. And don't call him repeatedly. That will only push him away. I won't. After she hung up, I opened the white garment bag hanging from my bedroom door. I had chosen a cream suit instead of a traditional wedding dress because Brandon wanted the ceremony to be quiet and efficient. His words, quiet and efficient, the kind of wedding that would not interfere with rounds, interviews, or awards. I put on the suit anyway, not for him, for myself. At 8:30, Owen met me outside his office. His gaze moved over my clothes, but he did not ask why I was dressed for a wedding. Are you certain? He said. No, that is not the same as unwilling. I'm certain they lied. I'm certain they intend to take everything. I'm not certain I won't hate myself tomorrow. Owen held the door open. You probably will hate parts of today. That's comforting. I'm your lawyer, not a greeting card. Inside the conference room, 6 folders waited on the table. Patent termination, trust enforcement, asset ownership notice, bank notification, board disclosure, regulatory submission. My hands went cold when I saw them. Owen sat across from me. We go through every document again. You ask every question. Nothing is filed until you say so. What happens first? The trust revokes Keller's license to use your mother's rehabilitation system. And the patient's, the temporary continuity license takes effect immediately. The facilities keep operating under independent oversight, so no one loses treatment. No. And employees? Payroll continues. Executive transfers stop. I nodded. That matters. I know. He pushed the first folder toward me. Once this is signed, Keller's lenders receive notice that the rehabilitation network's core intellectual property is disputed. They'll freeze the credit line. Most likely, Richard will blame me. Richard would blame a fire alarm for noticing the building was burning. I almost smiled. My phone vibrated. Brandon. Owen glanced at it. You don't have to answer. Yes, I do. I put the call on speaker. Brandon sounded distracted, not ashamed. Hey, I've got a situation. What kind? The award committee moved the presentation. Vanessa and I had to fly down last night. You're in Washington. A pause. Yes. Our ceremony is at 11. I know what time it is. Will you be there? He sighed. Sophia, I'm trying to explain. It's a simple question. I can't leave before the press conference. Then you won't be there. We'll reschedule. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. You promised me. I said I would try. No, you said. I promise. Why are you doing this? Owen looked down. Giving me privacy without leaving. Doing what? I asked, making me feel guilty for accepting an award that could change my career. You already have a career. This is national recognition. And I'm supposed to wait until your calendar has room for a marriage? It's 20 minutes at City Hall. I closed my eyes. There it was again. 20 minutes. A courthouse appointment. A delay that should not matter to a woman who loved him enough. Are you with Vanessa right now? She's working. That wasn't my question. Brandon lowered his voice. Don't start. Are you in the same hotel? We're attending the same event. Did you know yesterday that you were leaving? Silence. Brandon? Yes. And you let me prepare for today anyway. I knew you would overreact. Owen's expression hardened. I kept my voice steady. So you decided to humiliate me in private instead? No one is humiliating you. You left Boston without telling your fiancé the night before your wedding. It is not a wedding. It is a civil ceremony. The words hurt, but not enough to stop me. Then why should I reschedule it? He went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. He was no longer defensive. He was giving instructions. Go home. Don't call my parents. Don't contact the hospital. And do not post anything online. I looked at Owen. He raised one eyebrow. Why would I post anything? Because you're upset. You think I'm going to make a scene. I think you need time to calm down. Anything else? Yes. Do not embarrass me today. I stared at the folders in front of me. The old Sophia would have begged him to come home. She would have asked whether he still loved her. She would have promised not to be difficult. Instead, I said, take all the time you need. His tone softened immediately. Thank you. You're welcome. We'll talk tomorrow. No, Brandon, we won't. Before he could respond, I ended the call. My hand remained on the phone. Owen waited. Ask me again. I said, ask you what? If I'm certain. He studied my face. Are you certain? I opened the first folder. Yes. 9.12. I signed the patent authorization termination. At 9.36. I signed the temporary continuity license transferring oversight to an independent nonprofit operator. At 10.04. Owen sent ownership dispute notices to Keller Medical's lenders and investors. At 10.27, the Massachusetts board members received copies of the altered operating agreements. At 10.48, the federal insurance fraud submission was accepted for review. At 10.55, 5 minutes before I was supposed to stand beside Brandon and sign our marriage certificate, I resigned from Keller Medical. The final document was the incorporation filing for the Elaine Grant Medical Foundation. Owen placed a pen beside it. You don't have to become executive director. I know. You can appoint someone else while the investigation continues. I spent 6 years running those facilities while Richard collected the credit. That does not mean you owe them the rest of your life. No. I looked at my mother's name on the page, but I want to find out what they could become without him. I signed. At 11. The time of our scheduled ceremony, the clerk's office called. A woman named Linda spoke gently. Ms. Grant, we have you and Mr. Keller scheduled for a civil ceremony. Are you still coming? No. Would you like to reschedule? I looked at the engagement ring on my hand. No. There was a short silence. I'm sorry, she said. Thank you. I removed the ring. Owen did not watch me do it. That small act of respect nearly broke me. I placed the ring in an envelope with a single note. You missed more than a ceremony. At noon, Evan Cole called Brandon from outside the Keller Medical boardroom. I did not hear the conversation until weeks later, when Evan agreed to testify and gave us the recording. Brandon answered in a cheerful voice. So, how bad was it? Evan hesitated. What do you mean? Sophia, did she cry? Did she call the hospital? No. Did she show up at City Hall? No. Brandon laughed. I knew she'd panic. She didn't panic. Then what did she do? Evan swallowed loudly on the recording. She went to Mercer and Shaw. The laughter stopped. What? The hospital received a patent termination notice. Brandon said nothing. Evan continued. The banks froze the rehabilitation credit line. The board called an emergency meeting. Your father is trying to reach you. What did Sophia file? An ownership dispute. A trust enforcement action. A federal insurance complaint. That's impossible. She also resigned. Brandon's breathing became audible. Where is she? I don't know. What did she take? Evan's voice dropped. The rehabilitation network is under independent oversight. Keller can't transfer funds or sell assets. I asked what she took. The patents, the licensing rights, control of the companies financed by her mother's trust. Brandon swore. Vanessa spoke in the background. She's bluffing. Evan answered before Brandon could. The preliminary disputed valuation is almost $3 billion. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Brandon said, "Put my father on the phone. He's in the board meeting. Get him out. He can't leave." Why? Because the directors just suspended your management authority. The recording ended there. At 12.18, Brandon called me 7 times. At 12.23, Richard called twice. At 12.29, Margaret left a voicemail. Her voice shook with anger. "Sophia, whatever you think Brandon has done, this is not how family handles conflict. Call us before you cause damage you cannot undo." I deleted the message. At 12.41, Vanessa texted me, "You have no idea what you've started." I replied with 4 words, "Neither did you." Then I went into the restroom, locked the door, and cried until I could barely breathe. I cried for my mother. I cried for the money I had trusted them with. I cried for the patient families I had defended while the Kellers altered data behind my back. And I cried for the woman who had chosen a cream suit because the man she loved said a real wedding would take too much time. A soft knock sounded. "Sophia?" "Owen." "I'm fine." "No, you aren't. I made the right decision." "I know. Then why does it hurt this much?" He did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet, because making the right decision does not erase what it cost you to reach it. I pressed my fist against my mouth. I wasted 6 years. No, you don't have to be kind. I'm not. You made mistakes. You ignored things you should have confronted. You stayed silent when you should have spoken. I closed my eyes. Thank you. But you also kept evidence they thought was destroyed. You protected patients when they protected reputations. And today, when you had the power to shut everything down, you created a continuity plan instead. I wiped my face. You're saying I'm not completely pathetic. I'm saying you are not required to hate the woman you were in order to become someone stronger. I opened the door. Owen held out a cup of water. He did not touch me. He did not tell me everything would be fine. He simply waited until I could stand without shaking. That afternoon, Brandon boarded the first flight back to Boston. Before takeoff, he sent one final message. "Do not sign anything else. We will fix this when I get home." I looked at the message and almost felt sorry for him. He still believed he was coming home to the woman who waited. He did not understand that while he had been standing beside Vanessa, smiling for cameras, I had completed every document he thought I was too frightened to read. Brandon Keller had skipped our wedding because he believed I loved him too much to leave. By the time his plane landed in Boston, he no longer had a wedding,
A fiancé.
or control of the most valuable part of his family's empire. Brandon reached my apartment before I did. When I stepped out of Owen's car, Brandon was standing beside the entrance with his jacket open and his tie pulled loose. His eyes were red, and his phone was clenched so tightly in his hand that his knuckles had turned white. He moved toward me. "What did you do?" Not "Are you all right?" Not "I'm sorry." Not even "Can we talk?" "What did you do?" He repeated. I looked at Owen. "I'll call you." Brandon's eyes snapped toward him. "No, he stays out of this." Owen did not move. "Ms. Grant decides who stays." Brandon gave a bitter laugh. "Ms. Grant? You've been waiting a long time for this, haven't you?" Owen's expression remained calm. "For an investigation into medical fraud?" "Yes, I was talking about Sophia." "I know." I stepped between them. "Go home." "Owen, are you certain?" "Yes." Brandon watched him leave, then turned on me. "You brought him to our apartment?" "It isn't our apartment." His face tightened. "Don't play games. You moved out 6 months ago because the commute from your parents' house was easier. I still live here. You keep 2 suits in the closet. We're getting married." "No, we aren't." The word stopped him. For 1 second, he looked frightened. Then anger covered it. "You filed federal complaints because I missed 1 appointment? You know that isn't why. You froze hospital funds. I froze transfers from the rehabilitation companies. Do you understand what happens if payroll fails?" "Payroll won't fail. I arranged continuity funding." He stared at me. "You arranged it?" "Yes." "When?" Before today. His mouth opened, then closed. The realization moved across his face slowly. You planned this. I prepared for it. You set me up. I almost laughed. You left the state on our wedding day, Brandon, and you were waiting to destroy my family. I was waiting to see whether you would tell me the truth. I called you. You lied during the call. It was an award. It was a test. He frowned. You wanted to know how much humiliation I would accept before I stopped obeying you. That's insane. Then why was Evan told to monitor my reaction? His face changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. Who told you that? So it's true. No. You didn't ask what I meant. You asked who told me. He ran a hand through his hair and turned away. That was Vanessa's idea. You agreed. She was worried you would contact the press. I have spent 6 years protecting your public image. And now you're proving we were right to worry. I reached into my purse and took out the key to the apartment. I placed it in his palm. Get your things tonight. He looked down at the key. Sophia, I've already moved what matters. His fingers closed around it. You think Mercer is going to protect you? This isn't about Owen. It's absolutely about him. He hates my family. He has evidence against your family. Evidence you kept from me. I kept it because someone had to. Brandon stepped closer. You could have brought it to me. Would you have investigated your father? His jaw flexed. I would have handled it. That means no. You don't understand what it takes to run a medical group. I ran the parts you ignored. His eyes flashed. You were an operations manager. And you were a surgeon who called me every time something went wrong. That doesn't make you an owner. My mother's money does. He pointed toward me, his hand shaking. You gave us that money. I invested it. You wanted to be part of this family. I wanted to build something with you. You did. No, I built it. You put your name on it. His face hardened. You need to reverse the filings. I won't. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. You will attend. Explain that this was a misunderstanding. And restore Keller control. Or what? He stepped even closer. You do not want to make me your enemy. I looked at the man I had once trusted enough to marry. I think you became my enemy years ago. I was simply the last person to notice. The next morning, Keller Medical's emergency board meeting began at 9. Richard sat at the head of the table even though the directors had suspended his authority. Margaret sat beside him, dressed in gray. Her hands folded neatly in her lap. Brandon avoided looking at me. Vanessa did not. She watched me with open hatred. Richard spoke first. This is a private relationship dispute that has been irresponsibly transformed into a corporate crisis. One of the independent directors, Dr. Helen Price, frowned. Ms. Grant submitted records indicating false ownership declarations. Taken out of context, Richard said. Owen slid copies across the table, then provide the context. Richard did not touch them. He looked at me instead. Sophia, this has gone far enough. You're right. Withdraw the claims. No. Margaret leaned forward. Her face looked tired, but her voice was sharp. After everything this family has done for you, this is how you repay us. I stared at her. What exactly did you do for me? She blinked. We welcomed you. You tolerated me. We gave you a career. I earned my career. Richard struck the table with his palm. This is not the place for emotional accusations. Owen opened a folder. Then let's discuss documents. He projected the original Beacon operating agreement onto the screen. My name appeared beside the 28% ownership interest. Then he displayed the final agreement. My name was gone. Dr. Price looked toward Richard. Why was Ms. Grant removed? The structure changed. Why wasn't her investment returned? It was converted. Into what? Richard's lips tightened. A family capital contribution. I spoke before Owen could. I was not family. No one answered. I turned to Margaret. Did you know where the money came from? Her gaze dropped. Margaret. Brandon shifted in his chair. Leave my mother out of this. She signed a statement claiming I intended the money as a gift. Margaret's eyes filled, but her mouth remained firm. You said you wanted to help us. I helped you after your surgery. Her face went pale. I bathed you when you couldn't stand. I changed your bandages. I slept outside your room because you were afraid of another seizure. Sophia, she whispered. Was that a gift too? Did your attorney assign a value to that? She looked away. That hurt more than Richard's lies. He had always treated me like an asset. Margaret had pretended I was loved. Owen changed the screen. An email appeared. It was from Richard to Brandon. Once Sophia signs the postmarital acknowledgement, her prior contribution will be permanently classified as a family gift. Make sure she signs before she speaks to independent counsel. The room went silent. Brandon's face drained of color. Richard turned toward him. You forwarded that? No. I found it in the archived executive server, I said. Brandon looked at me. You accessed my private email? It was attached to a corporate restructuring file. That is privileged. It is evidence. He stood. This is ridiculous. She is stealing confidential records because she's angry I missed a wedding. Dr. Price's voice cut through his. Sit down. Dr. Keller. He stared at her. She did not blink. Slowly, he sat. Owen displayed another email. This one was from Brandon. Once Sophia signs after the wedding, she won't be able to separate her money from ours. My chest tightened even though I had already read it. Seeing it in front of him was different. I turned toward Brandon. Tell me what you meant. He swallowed. It was a legal discussion. Tell me. You were joining the family. That isn't an answer. We were getting married. Our finances were going to be connected. Then why did the agreement keep all your assets separate and make mine yours? His eyes moved around the room, searching for support. He found none. You're twisting my words. Did you know I would lose the right to reclaim my mother's money? He said nothing. Did you know? His jaw tightened. I knew the agreement protected the group. From me. From instability. I stared at him. What instability? He leaned forward, desperation making his voice harsher. You react emotionally. You question decisions you don't understand. Look at what you did because I went to Washington. A few directors exchanged glances. Brandon saw it too late. I kept my voice calm. You didn't hide the documents because I would overreact. He breathed through his nose. You hid them because I would say no. His silence was the only confession I needed. Owen moved to the next set of records. Altered patient recovery scores. Inflated insurance claims. Payments routed through Richard's advisory company. Vanessa interrupted. These figures have not been verified. They came from your archive crisis strategy folder. Owen said. Her lips parted. He displayed a document with her name at the top. Narrative response. Disgruntled fiancé and former employee. The plan described me as emotionally unstable, jealous of Vanessa, and willing to endanger patients after a broken engagement. I looked at her. You wrote this before Brandon missed the ceremony. Vanessa's face remained composed, but one hand trembled beside her tablet. It was a contingency plan. A plan for something you already knew would happen. Brandon turned toward her. You said it was only in case she went public. Vanessa stared back at him. And you said she would come back once she calmed down. The betrayal in his expression almost made me pity him. Almost. Dr. Price closed the folder in front of her. Effective immediately. Richard Keller and Brandon Keller remain suspended from all management authority. Dr. Keller will also be removed from clinical research activities pending independent review. Brandon rose again. You cannot suspend me from my own hospital. It is not your hospital, she said. His eyes moved to me. For the first time, he looked as if he understood. The institution he had inherited, the reputation he had protected, and the rehabilitation empire he believed carried his family's name had never truly belonged to him. It had been built with my mother's work, my money, and years of labor he had dismissed as support. The board meeting ended afternoon. Owen and I were reviewing the transition plan when my phone rang. It was Tasha, the nurse from the first patient crisis. Her voice was shaking. Sophia, something's wrong at Harbor Neuro. What happened? The patient system went down. Medication orders disappeared. Transportation schedules were canceled. Use the emergency paper protocol. We are. But there's more. What? IT says the changes came from your old administrator account. I stood so fast my chair rolled backward. That account was disabled yesterday. It was reactivated remotely. Owen was already opening his laptop. Ask her who authorized it. I repeated the question. Tasha hesitated. The override used a physician executive credential. Whose? Her answer came in a whisper. Brandon Keller's. By the time I reached Harbor Neuro Recovery, the staff had already switched to emergency paper charts. Tasha met me near the nurse's station. Her face was pale, But her voice remained steady. No missed medications so far. She said, "We caught the deleted orders during shift review. Any patients transferred?" 2. Both were scheduled before the system went down. Good. Keep the paper protocol active until IT confirms every record. She nodded, then lowered her voice. The news vans are outside. I stopped. How did the press find out this quickly? Tasha gave me a tired look. Vanessa still has friends. My phone rang before I could answer. Owen, we have a problem, he said. I'm standing inside it. It's bigger than the system failure. Brandon issued a statement. I closed my eyes. What did he say? That he is deeply concerned about the safety of patients during what he called your emotionally motivated corporate takeover. For 1 second, I could not speak. He used those words. Almost exactly. What about the credential logs? His attorney says the emergency credential may have been copied. Copied by whom? Guess. I looked through the glass toward the staff working from handwritten charts. Me. Yes. A reporter's voice rose outside. Ms. Grant, did you intentionally disable patient records? Tasha's mouth tightened. Tell me what to do. The old version of me would have told everyone to stay quiet until the lawyers finished. But silence had protected the Kellers for years. Keep caring for the patients, I said. I'll handle the cameras. Owen's voice sharpened through the phone. Sophia, do not make a statement without counsel. I'm not discussing evidence. Then what are you doing? Making sure Vanessa doesn't define what happened before the patient's families hear from us. I ended the call before he could argue. The reporters crowded closer when I stepped outside. Ms. Grant, did you use your former administrator account? Were medical records destroyed? Is this retaliation against Dr. Keller? I raised one hand. The clinical system was disrupted this morning. Emergency procedures were activated immediately. No patient missed a required medication. And no one was denied treatment. Did your account cause the shutdown? My former account was used. I did not use it. A reporter pushed forward. Dr. Keller says you have become unstable since he canceled your wedding. My stomach turned, but I kept my face still. This is not about a canceled wedding. It is about patient safety, corporate ownership, and falsified records. Are you accusing him of sabotage? I am saying the credential used to reactivate my account was issued under his physician executive authority. Investigators will determine who used it. Another reporter shouted, "Are you involved romantically with your attorney?" For the first time, anger cracked through my control. Patients nearly lost access to their medical orders. And that is your question? The reporter stepped back. I looked directly into the nearest camera. The rehabilitation centers will remain open. Employees will be paid. Patients will be treated, and every attempt to use sick people as leverage in a private power struggle will be documented. When I returned inside, Owen was waiting. His jaw was tight. You hung up on me. You were going to tell me not to speak. I was going to tell you that Brandon's team wants footage of you angry. Then they'll be disappointed. You looked angry. I am angry. He followed me into an empty office. That is exactly what they intend to use. So I'm allowed to be betrayed, robbed, and publicly accused. But I'm not allowed to look angry? I didn't say that. You keep telling me to remain calm while they try to ruin me. I'm trying to keep them from succeeding. I turned toward him. His face was tense, but not because he wanted to control me. He was afraid for me. The realization took some of the heat out of my voice. I'm sorry. Don't apologize because I'm uncomfortable. That's not why. He crossed his arms. Then why? Because I know you're trying to help. And I'm used to men calling my feelings dangerous when they really mean inconvenient. His expression softened. I don't think your feelings are dangerous. You think my decisions might be. Yes. I almost smiled. At least you're honest. I'm too tired to be charming. You've never tried very hard. That's also true. The door opened before either of us could say more. An IT manager named Miles Chun stepped inside holding a laptop. We found the source. Owen and I moved toward him. Miles displayed the access log. Ms. Grant's account was reactivated at 6:42 this morning. The request came through Dr. Keller's executive credential. Can you prove Brandon made the request? I asked. Not yet, but whoever did it knew the emergency override code. Who has that code? Dr. Keller, Richard Keller, and 2 cybersecurity officers. Vanessa? Not officially. Owen leaned closer to the screen. What happened after the account was restored? Someone canceled the automated backups, deleted medication queues, and removed transfer schedules. Then they logged out. Why didn't the system restore automatically? Miles looked embarrassed. Because the backup cycle had been changed 3 days ago. By whom? He clicked another file. Dr. Keller's credential. Owen's face became unreadable. Preserve everything. Make forensic copies. No one edits the original logs. Miles nodded and left. I looked at Owen. That's enough, isn't it? It's enough to investigate him. It may not be enough to prove he personally touched the system. He benefited. So did Richard. So did Vanessa. My phone vibrated. Brandon had sent an address and one sentence. Meet me alone if you want this to stop. Owen read it over my shoulder. No, I didn't ask. You don't need to. I'm going. He may be recording you. Then he'll record himself. Brandon chose a private dining room at a hotel near the public garden. He was already seated when I entered. His face looked thinner than it had 3 days earlier. His shirt collar was open, and there were dark circles under his eyes. For one dangerous second, I remembered how many nights I had waited for him after surgery with food he never ate. Then he looked at me and said, "You need to end this." The memory disappeared. Did you sabotage Harbor Neuro? His mouth tightened. No. Did you authorize the use of my account? No. Did Vanessa? I don't know. Did your father? I said I don't know. You usually know everything when you're giving orders. He leaned forward. Sophia, listen to me. The board is terrified. Lenders are threatening to pull out. If you withdraw the fraud allegations, we can stabilize the group. And the false data? We conduct an internal review. You already did that when Owen reported it. That was different, because you controlled the outcome. He pushed a hand through his hair. I admit mistakes were made. By whom? Everyone. I laughed quietly. Interesting. When the hospital won an award, it was your leadership. When the fraud surfaced, it became everyone's mistake. His eyes flashed. I came here to save what's left. So did I. No, you came to punish me. If this were punishment, I would have shut down the licenses without a patient continuity plan. You took my career. I didn't alter clinical data. You exposed internal problems that could have been fixed. You buried them. He stared at me, breathing hard. Then his expression changed. His shoulders lowered. His voice softened. Do you remember our first apartment? I went still. The one in Brookline. He continued. The heat barely worked. You used to sleep in my college sweatshirt. Why are you doing this? Because we weren't always like this. No, we weren't. We were happy. I was useful. That's not fair. You loved me most when I was fixing your life. His eyes reddened. I loved you when I had nothing. You were Richard Keller's son and a surgical fellow. You never had nothing. I had no reputation of my own, and I helped you build one. Yes, his voice cracked. You did. For the first time. He said it without turning the admission into an insult. He reached across the table. I moved my hand away. Vanessa meant nothing. He said, then why did you choose her over our wedding? I didn't choose her. I chose the award. That isn't better. I thought you would still be there when I came home. That was the problem. He stared at me. I knew you would be angry. I knew you would cry. But I thought you loved me too much to leave. The honesty of it hurt more than another lie. He had not believed I was unimportant. He had believed I was trapped. I did love you, I said. Then help me. There it is. His brow furrowed. You didn't apologize because you understood what you did. You apologize because you need something. I'm offering you everything you wanted. What exactly is that? We can get married. A real wedding this time. You can have a board seat. I'll revise the prenup. I stared at him. You still think those things belong to you? What? You think you can give me a position I earned? You think marriage is a reward you can put back on the table? His expression hardened. What do you want from me? The truth. I've told you the truth. No. Tell me whether you knew the patient data was false. He looked away. Brandon. It was presented as a temporary coding adjustment. Did you know the numbers were false? His jaw clenched. Yes. The word was barely audible. I felt something inside me settle. Not break. Settle. Did you know my mother's money had been hidden? He rubbed both hands over his face. Yes. Did you know the post-wedding documents would stop me from reclaiming it? He looked at me. Yes. I stood. Sophia. Wait. We're done. He grabbed my wrist. You think Owen loves you? I pulled against his grip. Let go. He loves what you control. The foundation. The patents. The case against my family. Owen gave me the documents and let me decide. Brandon's fingers tightened. You barely know him. You hid the documents and decided for me. That's the difference. I tore my wrist free. He rose. His face twisted with panic. If you walk out now, there is no fixing us. I looked at him. There hasn't been in us for a long time. When I returned to Owen's office, Evan Cole was waiting. He stood the moment he saw me. His hands trembled around a flash drive.
I'm sorry,
he said. For what? For watching you that morning. Owen closed the conference room door. Evan swallowed. Dr. Keller told me to record how many times you called. Vanessa wanted copies of any voicemails. She said they could edit them if you sounded hysterical. My stomach tightened. Did they? You didn't leave any. Brandon had sounded disappointed when Evan told him I had not made a scene. Now I understood why. Evan placed the drive on the table. I saved the planning emails and a recording from Richard Keller's office. Owen inserted the drive into an isolated laptop. Richard's voice filled the room. Once she signs after the wedding, the trust money is ours permanently. Then Brandon asked, what if she refuses? Richard laughed. Remind her how much she has to lose. A pause. Then Brandon said, with complete confidence, she won't refuse me. I stared at the laptop. Evan's face crumpled. I thought it was just family business. So did I said. Owen stopped the recording. This changes the case. When is the regulatory hearing? I asked. Friday. I looked at the evidence on the screen. For 6 years, the Kellers had counted on my loyalty. When loyalty failed, they planned to use my grief. When grief failed, they tried to turn me into a criminal, but they had made one mistake. They had kept too many records of how little they feared me. Submit everything, I said. Owen studied my face. You understand what happens next? Yes. Brandon may lose his medical license. He knew the data was false. He may face criminal exposure. He tried to frame me while patients were at risk. Owen nodded once. I'll file it. 2 days later, I walked into the public hearing without Brandon's ring, without the Keller name, and without any intention of protecting the people who had spent 6 years teaching me to disappear. This time, when they asked me what had happened inside Keller Medical, I was going to tell the entire truth. The hearing officer asked me to state my name for the record. Sophia Elaine Grant. Across the room, Brandon lifted his head. For 6 years, he had introduced me as his girlfriend, his fiancée, or the woman who managed operations for his family. That morning, I gave them only my name. The attorney representing the state medical board adjusted her glasses. Ms. Grant, when did you first become aware that patient recovery scores may have been falsified? 2 years ago. Brandon's lawyer stood immediately. Objection. Ms. Grant is not a clinician qualified to interpret rehabilitation outcomes. The hearing officer looked at me. Were you responsible for collecting the operational reports? Yes. Then she may answer. I opened the folder in front of me. 2 years ago, Owen Mercer submitted an internal compliance review, showing that several Keller facilities had reported improvements that did not match therapist notes. I was instructed to remove his report from the shared system. Who instructed you? Richard Keller. Richard sat behind Brandon. His face remained stiff, but one hand tightened around the head of his cane. The attorney continued. Did you remove it? I removed it from the active server. As ordered. Richard's lawyer smiled. Then I added. I also preserved an encrypted copy. His smile disappeared. The hearing officer leaned forward. Why? Because the report concerned patient safety. Why didn't you report it at the time? That was the question I had been dreading. I could have blamed Richard. I could have blamed Brandon. I could have said I had been manipulated, threatened, or confused. All of that would have been true. None of it would have been enough. I was afraid, I said. The room became still. I was afraid of losing my job. I was afraid of losing the man I planned to marry. I told myself I could protect patients by staying inside the organization. The attorney watched me carefully. Did you protect them? Sometimes. And other times, I protected the people who were hurting them. Brandon looked at me sharply. I kept my eyes on the hearing officer. I helped resolve complaints before they became public. I reassured families. I repaired staffing failures. I believed I was fixing the system. My fingers tightened around the edge of the folder. The truth is, I was helping the people who broke it remain in control. Brandon's lawyer stood again. This testimony is clearly motivated by a personal breakup. Owen rose beside me. The documentary evidence predates that breakup by years. The hearing officer nodded. Continue. We submitted the altered patient scores, the fraudulent billing comparisons, the fake ownership dates, the emails discussing my mother's trust. Then Owen played Evan's recording. Richard's voice came through the speakers. Once she signs after the wedding, the trust money is ours permanently. Brandon's face lost all color. What if she refuses? His recorded voice asked. Remind her how much she has to lose. Then came Brandon's answer. She won't refuse me. Hearing it again did not hurt the way I expected. It sounded like a stranger describing a woman who no longer existed. The state attorney turned toward Brandon. Dr. Keller, did you believe Ms. Grant would sign documents without independent counsel? His lawyer whispered to him. Brandon ignored the advice. We were getting married. That was not my question. He looked at me. His expression was wounded, almost accusing, as if I had betrayed him by allowing the room to hear his own words. Yes, he said. Did you know the documents would classify her prior investment as a gift? Yes. Did you know clinical recovery scores had been altered? His lawyer gripped his arm. Do not answer. Brandon's jaw tightened. The attorney waited. Finally, he said, I knew there were coding adjustments. Were the reported outcomes accurate? He stared at the table. No. A murmur moved through the room. Richard leaned toward him. You fool. Brandon turned. For the first time in his life, he looked at his father with something other than obedience. You told me it was temporary. Richard's eyes hardened. And you believed what was convenient. The hearing officer struck the desk. Both of you will remain silent unless questioned. By the end of the day, the board suspended Brandon's participation in clinical research and referred his conduct for a full licensing review. Richard was referred to federal investigators for insurance fraud, falsification of corporate records, and obstruction. Vanessa was called separately. She denied ordering anyone to destroy files until Miles Chun produced the archived messages she had sent to the cybersecurity team. Her composure broke for less than a second. That second was enough. Outside the hearing room, reporters surrounded us. One shouted, Ms. Grant, do you consider today a victory? No. The answer surprised them. A victory would have been finding out none of this happened. Will the rehabilitation centers close? No. The Elaine Grant Medical Foundation will continue operating them under independent supervision. Will employees lose their jobs? Frontline employees will not. What about executive leadership? I looked back toward the hearing room. They will have to answer for their own decisions. 3 months later, the court confirmed that my mother's trust retained control over the patents and the assets purchased with trust funds. The Keller family appealed. They lost. 6 months after that, the first facility reopened under its new name, the Elaine Grant Center for Dignified Recovery. At the staff meeting, Tasha stood in the front row with tears in her eyes. Your mother would be proud, she said. I hope so. She'd also tell you to eat something. I laughed. That sounds like her. We opened programs for veterans recovering from spinal injuries, workers who could not afford private rehabilitation, and families who had been denied coverage. Executive bonuses were suspended. Patient advocates received voting seats on the oversight committee. Clinical results were reviewed by outside researchers. For the first time, the people running the facilities were required to listen to the people receiving care. I became the foundation's executive director. At my first public presentation, a reporter introduced me as Brandon Keller's former fiancée. I took the microphone and smiled. My name is Sophia Grant. The foundation is named after my mother. We're here to discuss patients. No one used Brandon's name again. Margaret contacted me in the 7th month. She asked to meet alone. When I arrived, she looked smaller than I remembered. Without Richard beside her, she seemed uncertain where to place her hands. I owe you an apology, she said. Yes, she blinked at my answer. Perhaps she expected me to make it easier. I knew Richard had moved your money, she continued. I didn't know every detail. You knew enough to sign a statement. Her eyes filled. I was afraid of losing everything. So was I. I thought you would still marry Brandon. Everyone did. She lowered her head. You cared for me when my own son was too busy. I did. And I repaid you by helping them take from you. Yes. She wiped her cheek. Can you forgive me? I thought about the nights I had sat beside her bed, the medications I had organized, the gratitude she had shown in private and denied in public. I forgive myself for believing you loved me, I said. Forgiving you will take longer. She nodded slowly. For once, she did not ask me to make her feel better. Owen and I did not fall in love quickly. He did not appear at my door with flowers the week after the hearing. He did not tell me pain had made us destined for each other. He gave me space, sometimes too much. One night, after a 12-hour meeting, I found him packing files in the Foundation's temporary legal office. You're leaving the case? I asked. The main ownership dispute is resolved. That isn't what I asked. He looked at me. The rumors about us could create complications. You mean Vanessa's rumors? And Richard's attorneys. So they decide whether you stay? No, you do. I crossed my arms. That sounds suspiciously like you're making the decision and pretending it's mine. His mouth moved slightly. You have become difficult. I had excellent teachers. He closed the box. Sophia, I don't want you to think you owe me anything. I don't. That was fast. I'm grateful. That isn't the same as owing you my life. Good. But I want you here. His expression changed. As counsel? As the man who tells me the truth even when I hate hearing it. That sounds exhausting. Probably will be. He stepped closer. I don't need you to rescue me, he said. I know. And I don't want you to shrink so I can feel important. I wouldn't know how anymore. That time. He smiled. Then why should I stay? I held his gaze. Because you choose to. He stayed. We married 4 months later in a small civil ceremony in Cambridge. No reporters. No hospital board. No family contracts disguised as wedding gifts. Before we signed, Owen looked at me. Are you sure? The clerk smiled. You can ask her before I start the ceremony, counselor.
I para fer informat consent.
I laughed. This is the first marriage decision I've made without being afraid of what I might lose. His expression softened. And if you change your mind, you keep everything that belongs to you. That may be the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. It was technically a property statement. I know. That's why you liked it. The clerk cleared her throat. Should I continue? Yes, we said together. 2 weeks later, Brandon appeared outside my new office. My assistant called first. He says he won't leave. Call security. He's on his knees. I closed my eyes. Of course he was. Even his desperation needed an audience. When I stepped into the hallway, Brandon looked up. His shirt was wrinkled. His face was thin. And the confidence that once filled every room had vanished. Sophia, stand up. Please, stand up. Brandon. He did. But slowly. The medical board is considering permanent restrictions. He said. The federal investigators think I was part of Dad's plan. You were. I didn't know how far it went. You knew the data was false. I never hurt a patient in surgery. That isn't the only way a doctor can hurt someone. His eyes filled. If you tell them I cooperated, you didn't. I will now. Because you're scared. Because I finally understand. No, you finally lost something. He grabbed my hand, pulled it free. I loved you, he said. I know I failed you, but I loved you. You loved what I did for you. That isn't true. You left me waiting because you believed I would still be there when you returned. His face crumpled. I thought you loved me too much to leave. I did. Hope flashed in his eyes. I finished the sentence. I loved you enough to give you 6 years. I finally loved myself enough not to give you the rest. He covered his face. What am I supposed to do now? I looked at him for a long moment. For years, every crisis in Brandon's life had become my responsibility. Not anymore. Tell the truth, I said. Accept the consequences. Build whatever life is left without asking another woman to carry it for you. He lowered his hands. Were you ever really going to marry me? I wanted to become your wife more than I wanted to remain myself. My voice did not shake. Now I only want to remain myself. Security arrived. Brandon did not resist when they escorted him away. Owen stood in my office doorway, but he had not interrupted. He waited until Brandon was gone before asking, "Are you all right?" Yes, it was the truth. Through the glass wall, I could see patients arriving for the Foundation's new Veterans Program. A therapist greeted a man walking with braces. His wife remained beside him while their intake coordinator explained the assistance fund. My mother's name was printed on the wall behind them. For years, I thought being chosen by a successful man would prove that my life mattered. I was wrong. My life began to matter when I stopped waiting for someone else to choose it. Brandon believed the worst thing he could do was leave me waiting on our wedding day. He was wrong about that too. The worst thing he did was show me how little of myself I had left. The best thing he did was give me one empty morning to take it all back.